The voice of my wife could be heard through the phone, carrying with it an air that was simultaneously urgent and uneasy. She begged me, "William, I need you to come to me as soon as you can. You should visit only the clinic of your friend and nowhere else." Welcome to Heartbreaking Talks. Let's continue. Her tone was trembling and fraught with anguish. My thoughts were flooded with worry and my heart was racing. What exactly was the problem? Despite my concerns, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. If she changed her mind about going to the gym and instead went to the house of a friend, then it is beyond my comprehension why she is in such a hurry for me to drive her to the clinic that belongs to a friend of mine. My mind was arguing with a lot of different ideas. Should I bring up the contradiction with her and confront her? My stomach was in knots and it was difficult to think straight. As a result of my doubts, as I struggled to come to terms with my concerns, the love and trust that had been cultivated between us over the years compelled me to believe in her and to place her well-being ahead of anything else. Despite my cluttered mind, I mustered the courage to respond, "Of course, my sweetheart. I am on my way. Just hold on." The drive there was filled with plenty of conflicting feelings and thoughts. Apprehension over the state of my wife's health coexisted with the uneasy suspicion that something was wrong. Her explanation didn't quite add up. It was her regular gym time, and I knew exactly where her gym was located. However, it was located in the opposite direction of the area she claimed to be. As I reached the exact house she told me, I heard her scream. I went through the entire house and found her naked with a pale face. Part of the bedsheet was crumpled on her, and some of it was on the mattress. When she saw me, she passed out. I was instantly aware of the wild circumstances that were taking place. I picked her up and raced with her to the medical facility owned by a friend of mine. After examining my wife, my friend informed me of something that I had not been anticipating and was not prepared to hear. I was under the impression that she had deceived me or that she had been read, but he informed me that more than one person had attempted to do it. He told me to get in touch with the authorities as soon as possible before it was too late. He also encouraged me to treat my wife with caution because we are unsure of what exactly took place. I did not report anything to the authorities because Georgia urged me to take her to this clinic, and the fact that she did so indicates that there was something she did not want anyone else to know about. I stopped him from telling the police anything. No one will ever be able to imagine what it was like for me during the time that my wife was unconscious, but one thing was certain. She was not loyal to me. When I think back on all of the fights we had over the course of 6 months, I realize that she is someone I did not marry. There were times when I questioned whether or not she had someone else in her life other than me, or whether she was upset with life's challenges, but I couldn't get up the nerve to ask her about it because we had such a great life together. A few months ago, I was in the process of trying to figure out what had gotten into her. The truth about what took place there is only one way to find out when Georgia will open her eyes, but until then, I need to keep myself compassed. After a period of time, she regained consciousness, and when she opened her eyes, I hurried up to her and took her hand while it was shaking. "Are you okay? What exactly took place?" When I inquired, she could hear the real concern and rage in my voice. She turned her head to look at me, and her eyes were filled with a mixture of embarrassment and shame. She stuttered, "I'm so sorry," as she tried to apologize. I lied about where I was. I was not there forcefully. I was in the process of meeting somebody. Then she went on to say that she was seeing a black guy at her gym, and today she and he reserved an apartment for the whole day. However, when she arrived at the apartment, she was surprised to find that the black guy was there with 5 of his other friends. They subjected her to multiple acts of coercion, the last of which was carried out by her boyfriend, after which they left her unconscious in the rented flat. When I heard what had happened, my heart dropped and the realization hit me like a wave crashing onto the beach. It was difficult for me to understand what she was saying, since my mind was working so hard to keep up with the unfolding events. She had lied to me, which broke the trust that had served as the foundation of our relationship up until that point. Why? I was only able to mutter, and my voice was shaking with a combination of pain and rage. She drew in a slow breath as she noticed tears beginning to form in her eyes. "I wanted something fresh," she said, her voice containing an odd mixture of pride and guilt. "I started having an affair with someone I met at the gym. I had the thought that I required something unique and fresh. In that instant, everything in my universe came crashing down. The hurt caused by her betrayal was severe, and I knew it would take some time for the wounds it caused to heal. I wanted to yell at her and take out my anger on her for all the suffering she had caused. But despite the anguish, I came to the realization that the foundation of our relationship had been more than just her cheating on us. It had been a journey filled with shared achievements, hardships, and progress. My voice was shaking as I spoke the words. I need some time to process this, but I finally managed to get them out. I don't know what the future holds for us, but I need some space to figure it out. Don't forget to like and subscribe my channel to help me push this video to recommendations. They advised me to be kind to her because she needs my love and affection. When I left her room, the doctor told me about her physical and mental health. I didn't know what else the doctor said to me, but after hearing the words love and affection, I felt as if someone had just slashed my heart into pieces. We shared a lot of memories and dreams, and our connection seemed unbreakable. But as time went on, little things started to change in our once good relationship. I began to notice a change in Georgia's attitude. What used to make her happy now made her unhappy. Our talks became tense, with a lot of silence and frustration we didn't say out loud. Georgia literally moved away, putting up an invisible wall that seemed impossible to break through. My heart was wounded by the pain of this emotional withdrawal. Puzzle pieces have finally fallen to the ground. I realized that my wife's change in mood wasn't just because life had given us some problems. It was because she wasn't being faithful and wanted to try something new. The news hit me like a bolt of lightning. My mind was full of questions, and my heart was full of anger. How could she break the trust we'd built up? Why did she take this road without thinking about what would happen? I was so angry that I wanted to get even and get payback. But as the emotional storm raged inside me, I could see how much it would hurt my own mental peace. Seeking revenge would only keep the circle of pain going and make it impossible to find peace. Because of her new encounters, she turned my home, which was once my paradise, into a tormenting place for me to live in. This caused her to make my life a living nightmare as a result of the inconsequential disagreements that we kept having with one another. I started looking for excuses to avoid going back home. I have determined to go after those jerks and teach them a lesson so that they will never mess with my wife or any other woman again. This is true regardless of the difficulties that may arise in my relationship with my wife. No one would dare to hurt her. I need to begin my investigation at the gym in order to learn more about him, such as his name and where he is from. I didn't ask my wife for any specifics since I didn't want anyone to have the slightest bit of uncertainty about what I was about to do to them. So, I went to the gym and collected all of the information that I needed. Then, I went to the place that he had given to the gym and I found out that he had given them the wrong address. I went back to the gym and, after about an hour, I obtained his picture. Then, I went to the same place where I had gone previously and started showing the picture to everyone I passed along the way. I portrayed that I was looking for that person because he took my money and vanished, and now I am looking for him to get my money back. I also made myself out to be a huge, nasty guy that deals in shady business, and he was working for me. Even though the neighborhood was not very hospitable, after an entire day of searching, one adolescent lad told me about that jerk. I learned that he was not even on a legal visa here and that he moves about quite frequently. In addition to that, he is involved in criminal activities. That teenager also provided me with his current location, so I went there once again. The neighborhood was not pleasant there, however, this time, I took my baseball bat with me from my car and went straight inside the building. I knocked on the door and hid my bat behind it. However, no one answered the door, so I entered the house because the door wasn't locked. There was a lot of smoke inside, and 4 or 5 hooligans were smoking and drinking. While they were only half aware, I grabbed a picture out of my back pocket to confirm, and I saw him lying down on the sofa. I started beating him, and I didn't know where I was hitting him, but when he started screaming, all those hooligans tried to stop me. When I hit them, they ran outside, and he was left alone with me. After that, I don't remember how long I beat him, but I made sure that he never walks again. And even if he does, he will be crippled. While I was leaving, I updated him that he couldn't register a complaint against me because 1, he is living in the country illegally, and 2nd, even if he did submit a complaint, I would press charges against him for the rape of my wife. She took her time becoming physically better, and the physicians made sure that her health was their top priority. But the scars that remained were not only visible on her body, they also penetrated deeply into her spirit. Therapy was suggested by the doctors as a means of recovering from her emotional wounds and regaining her sense of who she is, since they understood the significance of addressing her emotional wounds. After learning of her condition, I was at a loss for what to do next because I am unable to live with her, but she is not yet able to handle living by herself. In this state, I didn't know what to do. As the days stretched into weeks, the wounds gradually began to become covered in scabs. We looked for consolation in therapy and an honest conversation as we struggled to negotiate the perilous terrain of the healing process. But the harm had already been done, and the fabric of our previously unshakable tie had been irrevocably changed as a result. Another unexpected challenge presented itself to us just as we were starting to feel like we had some control over our lives again. My wife first shared the news with me that she was expecting a baby during one of our therapy sessions. My reactions were all over the place after I heard the news, as it came on suddenly and unexpectedly. A turbulent storm was caused by the collision of anger, confusion, and dissatisfaction. How could I possibly move on with my life, knowing that an offspring would serve as a continual reminder of the affair that led to the destruction of our relationship, and any notion of love that had been preserved was in danger of being suffocated by the mounting pressure of the betrayal. When I first started to believe that I was getting back to my life, I was mistaken because I was not, and I was just fooling myself into thinking that I was. When the truth about my wife's pregnancy finally sank in, I realized that it was getting harder to suppress my rage. I couldn't wait for the baby to arrive. The hatred and animosity that had been building up beneath the surface for some time finally came to the surface, and it did so in the form of a barrage of stinging words and accusations. I lashed out because I was unable to comprehend how my wife could bring a child into our broken world. The child was a reminder of the infidelity that drove us apart, and I couldn't understand how she could do that. In the end, I made the choice to go my separate way. The emotional anguish caused by the betrayal, in conjunction with the persistent trust concerns, proved to be insurmountable obstacles. I couldn't help but feel a mixture of sadness and relief as we said our goodbyes and went our separate ways. The breakup did not come without its share of difficulties. The emotional wounds persisted, permanently carved into the very fabric of our beings. But as time went on, the wounds started to slowly heal, and now there are only traces left behind to remind us of what we once had in common. My ex-wife began the road of becoming a mother on her own, shifting her attention to caring for the life that was developing inside of her. As for me, I was resolved to reconstruct my life and find my own sense of happiness again. So, I found solace in self-reflection and personal development, even though the road that lay ahead of us was unclear. The two of us were aware that the scars that were caused by the affair would always leave a trace. My recovery and regaining the parts of myself that I had misplaced along the way were both made possible by the space and time that the separation provided me. After the separation, I never contacted her despite the fact that I knew she was in the worst mental health of her life and I was trying to help her. But when she informed me about her pregnancy, I realized I was just bottling up my rage and it vented out that day. I understood that I wanted this to be ended and never looked back. So, I don't know how I was going to bring that baby into this world with this mental condition. My life has taken a number of divergent twists over the course of the years, each of which has led me down a unique road of growth and insight. The wounds I sustained in the past eventually healed to become scars which serve as constant reminders of the struggles I overcame and the resilience I discovered deep within myself. And when I stepped into my new life, I brought with me the wisdom that I had gained from my previous experiences. The path was challenging, but it brought me to a destination from where I could see my future illuminated by three guiding beacons: the search for happiness, the act of forgiving others, and the growth of personally. One evening, as I was dining in a busy restaurant, I happened to run into her sister. There, during the time that we were waiting for our tables, her sister and I struck up a conversation. She told me that my ex-wife had been going through a tough patch and that, despite the fact that she had a child, she was currently living alone in a psychiatric facility. When I heard the news, I immediately felt a combination of intrigue and alarm. I went to see her, but because of her precarious health, I wasn't granted permission to meet her. I then asked if I could only see her, and they accepted my request. When I saw her, she was sitting on the side of her bed, her eyes vacant and filled with melancholy. Her frail appearance gave away the toll that her current situation had placed on her health and well-being. After seeing her in that state, I was able to forgive her, and it was as if a big weight had been lifted off my chest. However, this does not mean that I will ever get back together with her. That is not going to happen under any circumstances. However, in order to free myself from the wounds of the past, I need to forgive and forget her because she is currently bearing the consequences of her poor decisions, which she will continue to bear for the rest of her life. Let's go to the next story. Given that her husband was still commuting to the city every day for work and she was alone in the boonies with very few friends, that's where she met Steve. At first, it seemed like it would be a one-time thing, but when she got home, he continued to contact her and they stayed in touch. Her work took her back to North Carolina often, or I'm sure it did, where she and Steve carried on their affair for the next 8 months. I was mostly looking for a way out, then tragedy struck. I cheated on my spouse. Here's what I wish I had known beforehand. According to recent statistics gathered by the Institute for Family Studies, 20% of men and 13% of women reported that they had sex with someone other than their spouse while married. While both genders are guilty of straying, men and women tend to commit infidelity for different reasons. According to science, men often cheat because they feel their masculinity is being threatened. Women, on the other hand, are more likely to do it because they feel neglected or ignored by their partners. Every case of infidelity is different, and it's important not to judge without hearing someone's story. Sometimes a marriage is doing totally fine until an opportunity arises that someone just can't pass up. Other times, as was the case with Molly below, all names have been changed to protect identities. The foundation for infidelity was laid out long before the wedding bells rang. As terrible as cheating is, it doesn't need to be something that ruins your life and obliterates any trust or affection you can ever have with your partner. Some couples work through a cheating episode and come out stronger. Others break up but manage to stay friends. In any of these cases, it's always possible to use the incident as a prompt for self-reflection and thereby learn from it and grow. So read on for one woman's account of her own brush with cheating and what you can take away from her experience. In her late 20s, Molly was dating a man who was 11 years older than her. They loved each other, but Molly broke up with him several times because she felt he wasn't supportive of her career ambition. Then she got pregnant. At first, she was going to terminate, but the clinic didn't have any openings for 6 weeks. Though she had a lot of time to think about her decision, one day while working out on the elliptical, she broke down crying. She realized that, as irrational as the choice might be, she needed to have this baby. She called her ex-boyfriend and told him her decision, saying that he didn't need to be involved. He got furious and stormed out, but later in the day, he called and apologized and said he was all in. Long before the wedding, Molly knew that this wasn't the right man for her. I showed up to the ceremony an hour late and drunk, so that tells you a lot, laughs. They moved to a house in New England, where their marriage became increasingly strained. Given that her husband was still commuting to the city every day for work and she was alone in the boonies with very few friends, they moved down south where she's from originally, and things got a little better. They even had another child. But then the fighting began, and the long talks about whether or not to try to stick things out and make it work. One day, Molly got sent to North Carolina for a work trip. After her colleagues had left the bar, she decided to stay for one more drink. That's where she met Steve. At first, it seemed like it would be a one-time thing, but when she got home, he continued to contact her, and they stayed in touch. Her work took her back to North Carolina often, or I'm sure it did, where she and Steve carried on their affair for the next 8 months. When things got serious, she started to think about leaving her husband, but hesitated because of the children. I wasn't ready to just leave, and I couldn't envision what it would be like to not be a family, she says. Not to mention, as much as she cared for him, she wasn't even sure if Steve was necessarily the one, either. I was mostly looking for a way out, then tragedy struck. In late December, on her birthday, Molly got a call from an unknown number. It was Steve's roommate. Steve had been killed in a car crash. His vehicle had swerved into an oncoming truck late at night, killing both drivers. Molly was inconsolable. When she got home that night, she told her husband that a friend of hers had died, but he could tell something was off. A few days later, it was Christmas Eve, the day before Steve's funeral. Molly knew that she had to go and say her goodbyes, but that meant having to tell her husband about her affair. On Christmas, no less, she waited until the guests had left, then confessed everything. He was, as one might expect, furious. But when she got back from the funeral, he still begged her to try to work it out for the sake of their children, if nothing else. They lasted 3 more months after that, then agreed that it was for the best that they split for good. Here's the funny thing, though. Today, 11 years later, they are best friends and wonderful co-parents to their 2 children. He became a totally different person after our marriage ended, Molly says. I tell all of his girlfriends, you're welcome. While she doesn't believe that reconciliation is remotely possible, he's like a brother now. He couldn't be happier with the relationship they have now. Molly remarried after their divorce, but that ended as well, so she's single now and loving it. The 42-year-old has a high-powered career that takes her all over the world and gives her the independence she always craved. The fact that she is on such good terms with her ex-husband means that she can have the comfort and support of a family while also enjoying the fun of the single life. Like Gwyneth Paltrow and many other women, she is reinventing the concept of a modern family, and she and her ex-husband are even considering writing a book on successful co-parenting. Molly doesn't regret marrying her ex-husband, not least of all because it gave them 2 wonderful children. That first year that we had our first baby was probably the best year of my life, she said. And we had our ups and downs. She also doesn't regret having an affair with Steve, but what she does regret, however, is not leaving earlier so as not to have caused the pain that she did. What I wish I'd known then is that when you're young, you tend to be selfish and think of your own needs. When you're older, you realize how much of an impact your actions have on another person's life. My ex-husband had a very hard time getting over the dissolution of our marriage, and I think it's played a role in his dating difficulties since. The affair was also a lesson in making sure you're choosing the right person to marry for the right reasons. Molly knew even then that she wouldn't have married her husband if she hadn't gotten pregnant, and in many ways, that precipitated the infidelity that later took place. I've been engaged 4 times and only went through with it twice. I remember one of the times that I called it off, it was because I realized I was more excited about picking out the flowers than the guy. But the final lesson is that as terrible as infidelity is, people can move past it. Today, over a decade later, she and her ex-husband never bring up the cheating anymore, even though he had also cheated throughout their marriage. It's water under the bridge. All of our past transgressions are just that, in the past. Well, her man, she never really wanted to marry him, right? They had children, right? Oh, what if those aren't his kids? She married him just so the kids would have a father. She just liked the way that person blew her back out. What if this guy's not even the father? And then towards the end, she says, well, he was cheating too all throughout the marriage. Are you trying to say that to make yourself feel better about what you did? I don't know. She doesn't regret having the affair with Steve. What she does regret, however, is not leaving earlier. Dang. Guys, is it worth it? Is it worth it? Let's check out another story. Next story, guys. Thank you for watching, by the way. So, a Navy wife thinks an open relationship is the way to go. Oh. Okay. Navy wife, I have been married to my husband, who was in the Navy, for almost 3.5 years. When we met, I was hesitant to date him because I was going through a divorce and because of his military status. I was used to seeing people go through heartaches after meeting other people who are in the military. I have this mentality that they come and go after 6 months, so why should I bother? I told him that my previous marriage was filled with deception, emptiness, and lots of heartache. It completely turned my point of view in life, particularly in relationships. I told him that if we got married, I wanted him to just be honest with me. If he wanted something outside of our marriage, then I'd rather him tell me than do it behind my back. We made everything official during the summer of that same year and got married a month after my divorce was final. Everything was great until we got to his new command. My husband and I didn't have any intimate connection for 1.5 years. It felt like he just didn't want to look at me anymore. For the longest time, I tried mending what could be invisible small cracks, spicing everything up between us, but to no avail. I eventually gave up and started talking to him about having fun, traveling, and meeting people when he leaves for deployment. I told him that I wanted to be intimate with other people. From the moment I brought it up, I was entirely honest with him. I told him that I started a Tinder account and was talking to people on Tinder and other places online. I also told him that if he feels like meeting other people during his deployment, then he should go for it. I honestly don't have any qualms about it. Despite all of my honesty, he still felt the need to invade my privacy. I felt betrayed. At this very moment, things between us have gone to ashes. You didn't realize until now that it was that bad. I felt like an afterthought. He wants to save our marriage, and I said okay, but I still want to do what I want to do. I'm just that type of person. He apologized, and I did too, but I know for a fact that it's not going to be the same between us with just the snap of our fingers. It will take time. I love my husband, and I appreciate him doing his best to save the marriage, but he is just in my face now, forcing everything with all his might. I told him he cannot force everything on me now, or else he will just tear everything out completely. I told him that I am at war with myself at the moment and that I just don't know what I want right now. Wow. I reassured him that regardless of what's going on, I will always love him. I will not leave him, and if time permits us to grow older together, we will. Was I wrong, Miss Vicky? I tried to be honest and still ended up losing my marriage. Somebody's replying, yes, I think you're wrong to marry this man when you know you are the type of woman who doesn't mind being a hookup girl on Tinder. As you know, Tinder is an app that allows you to search your immediate area for hookups. You like photos, they like yours, and you meet up. Absolutely. Thank you. I've been saying that. That's it. It's just an F site to meet people to go F. It's really dangerous too because you really don't know who you're meeting. However, you are right about one thing. Honesty is the best policy. But that's neither here nor there. It sounds like you both were players before you decided to get married, but your husband didn't realize that you are a woman who can outplay him. Let me be honest, you're not the only person who is willing to be in an open relationship. It's more popular than a lot of people realize. People know that I am not being judgmental. I don't think you have to hide behind a marriage when you don't want to. There are many people who know they don't have the personality type to be married. Nothing is wrong with being honest about that. I don't think your marriage happened too fast and probably shouldn't have happened at all. Perhaps your husband thought he could change you, maybe he wanted a challenge. Now he realizes he doesn't have enough time in the day to watch you. I totally understand that he invaded your privacy, but what happens next? I do think this marriage is beyond over, but that's just my 2 cents. Thanks for writing me and for reading the column. Wow. Yeah, of course, a relationship is completely over, but the nerve of this woman. Now he's in my face. I told him I'm gonna do what I wanna do. This is what I want. It's about me, 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 me. Is it worth it? Guys, let me know what you think about all these stories in the comments.